All right. So, Bryce, thank you very much for joining us today. Before we dive in, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to clear up a little bit of a common myth about Wounded Warrior Project. Wounded Warrior Project isn't just helping those with physical injuries. Their mission is to honor and empower warriors who incurred physical and mental health injuries, illnesses, and wound co-incidents in their military service on or after September 11th, 2001. I have been a personal recipient of Wounded Warrior Care, and they 1000% are the holistic ecosystem that all of us need. And this includes world class career counseling, which Bryce leads, mental health support, financial wellness programs, and legislative advocacy. Bryce is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, as well as a graduate in the London School of Economics. He served in the United States Navy as a surface warfare officer and has done a lot of absolutely remarkable things throughout his career field, including spending time with Microsoft and Fuse integration. Bryce knows what the boardroom is like. He knows tech stacks, and most importantly, he knows exactly what it feels like taking the uniform off and wonder what's next. Bryce, thank you very much for being here. We greatly appreciate Wounded Warrior Project being here today with Seven Eagle Group. Thank you for your time, sir. Go right ahead. Tell us about you.
All right, twice clothing up. All right. Sometimes you just gotta do the best you can with what you got. So, my name is Bryce. It's funny that you bring up defense contracting and tech project managing, being a tech project manager, because today I installed a power Ethernet system for my home Wi-Fi. Wouldn't have been aware of that if I didn't work in that space for quite some time. But today I want to do something fundamentally different from what I've usually done in the past. Um, if you want to see what I talked about last time, I basically broke down the ins and outs of using AI for your job search. And I'll try to get to the facilitator here afterwards, my YouTube channel that I created about a week or two ago. And that takes people step by step. You can go through at 2 times speed. If you have premium, 4 times speed. Sometimes I do that because I have ADHD. Um, but, you know, I'm going to start with the end of the story and then work backwards, because too often in the civilian sector, people only care about one thing. And in business school, I was getting my MBA. They called it the WITHM. What's in it for me? I'm sure many of you have heard about it. This is fundamentally different from everything that we've been trained to do and be in the military, at least in my experience going through the Naval Academy and then 5 years as a surface warfare officer in the Navy. Um, at that point, it was ship, shipmate, self. And that was the pyramid in that system. So if you weren't putting others before yourself, you were, as the chiefs called, what was it, like wrecked, or I think they used some curse word or something, like you were wrong, right? You were absolutely wrong. And humans don't operate in a hierarchical environment with very large groups naturally. If you want to get nerdy about it, you can look at the biology of humans and our ancestors. But essentially, what psychologists have continued to look into and proven is that, we're very tribal in nature. So instead of ship myself, working on a cruiser with 300 people, you might have a nuclear family, 5 or 6 people, extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, stuff like that. And then they found that in order to have a very successful network outside of your family, I don't know what the magic number is, but I do remember it's, I believe, less than 50. So let's just say 30 people. And so, in order to actually maintain those connections and have strong, relevant connections, we have to constantly refresh and maintain those connections. So, the answer to the story at the end of the day that I'm trying to ingrain upon people is that your narrative has to almost fundamentally change. It's not good enough to rely on your rank. It's not good enough to rely on your MOS or occupational specialty. It's not good enough. Like for me, for example, I really thought everything was going to be on a silver plate, because that's what they told us when I went to the Naval Academy. And then they're like, okay, well, surface warfare officer is going to be very hard. Everyone knows that. But when you get out, you'll be able to just pick up chief executive roles, maybe not CEO, but senior program manager. Um, what else is there? Like operations manager, operations director, all those kinds of things. It's not that there's not elements or kernels of truth in that. It's just that that way of thinking about life is very rigid. It's very black and white. It's not very realistic. And I'm a big believer in being optimistic, good for your mental health. Being a pessimistic can be advantageous in certain situations where threats are looming. Like the people that are like, "Oh, the volcano's going to blow out." First people out, they're probably safe. Being a pessimist sometimes does work out. Um, Once again, I'm a big nerd about biology. That was, that's why those certain, traits kept around. Um, that's a very long-winded way of saying that you're going to have to network yourself into position, because the only two things that are really in your control, if you're thinking like from a very narrow lens, are your resume, which we'll come back to, and the connections you build leading up to the interviews, going through the interview process, and finally being selected. Um, Sorry, do you want to read that out or?
Yep, I can do that. For those of you talking BDD shop talk, we were talking about the processes to get ratings and DD 214. So I think this was part of the conversation we were having before you showed up, Bryce. So we can just put a pin in that for right now.
Okay. Yeah. The quick plug, Wounded Warrior Project does handle disability ratings and other benefits ratings, whether it's you're trying to initially submit or get them upgraded. And we have 20 plus other programs and services. As the gentleman was saying earlier, we don't just work with severely disabled veterans. That's not the case anymore. We work with anyone on active duty for the most part, as long as they can provide the documentation or verify their active duty military status through ID and Me. It's like 30 seconds. What I do is career coaching. So I work with people, from initiation of that transition or once they've been out up to doing the resume, doing the networking, helping them interview prep, helping them negotiate a salary. So go check out our programs and services. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how holistic we are, how comprehensive we are, and everything is 100% free. Okay. So, it really comes to the end of the story, and then I'll work my way back to the beginning, is the two things that are most in your control are resumes and networking. And at the end of the day, because I don't want to waste anyone's time, I don't want to paint this, cherry red picture. Most people really struggle with both of those things, especially the networking piece. All right, let's tackle the first one. Resumes. Most people wait until the last minute, when they are trying to figure out what they want to do when they get out. This is disadvantage. This is, not the best ideal scenario for many reasons, but chief among them being that when you lose time, when you have finite energy and time, people tend to panic. They tend to scramble. It's like watching those plays at the end of a football game where they're down a touchdown, but they only have 20 seconds, and then they just throw the Hail Mary. Most people don't catch the Hail Mary. Some wide receivers. Um, so what you want to do is be very pragmatic about the transition process. This is something I really struggled with, and the reason that I got into career coaching is because I wanted to try to help people avoid the pitfalls that the trappings I fell into. Everyone in a transition, and I don't care if, like my old commanding officer on the ship, he's now CEO of Fifth Fleet. He'll probably do 30 years. He'll probably retire 3-star, and that's great on him. But he's probably going to still want to work. Walt Pyatt, He's our CEO. He was, I think, a 3-star. He was in charge of the National Guard for a while. Very long tenured career, and he still is working because humans naturally don't want to just, even if you're financially set for life, which is not going to be the case for many of you or many people in general, even with disability ratings and you have retirement, people generally want to continue solving problems. They want to be engaged with the community. They want to be able to provide value. Um, Sometimes I'll get those country songs on my Spotify and they say, oh, well, my boss said I was late, so I went fishing. It's like a dumb AI parody song. Um, Most people aren't built like that. Most people are not built like Jimmy Buffett. Most people, if you're in service or you've been of service in the military, you probably want to continue providing service. Um, but that's not enough. Okay, so the one thing you can do is you could come to Warriors to Work, our career services program, and we could take your fit reps, your evals. Maybe you have a resume for any who have already transitioned, and we basically say, okay, based on the job descriptions you're interested in, and you meet the minimum qualifications for, this is what a tailored resume looks like to be a tech project manager, right? And then going forward from that, you can make the minor modifications. I'm very, I feel very strongly about this next point. AI is wonderful. AI can do basically your entire job search for you and the research associated with it. But I do not recommend for most people, and I mean 98% or more, to use AI to write their first resume. I've done hundreds and hundreds of resumes. My coworkers have done hundreds and hundreds of resumes. I believe we're the best at using AI to tailor resumes. Out of what's out there. But at the end of the day, having one quality product that's civilianized, whether that's a federal job application, whether that's a defense project manager, whether that's nonprofit, executive, whatever it may be, you want to have one quality product that has about 75% of the work experience bullets having quantitative metrics. Um, so that way, if you decide, well, I want to go from tech project management to defense project management, now you can make those minor modifications. You have a base resume. Um, and that's pretty much it for resumes. It takes me, I did one yesterday, I think, in like 30 minutes, soup to nuts. So it's really fast. Not all AI are created equal. That's another conversation for another time. But at the end of the day, AI is kind of like this jack of all trades, right? The Swiss Army knife. It's not going to be perfect at writing resumes without someone who knows how to use it. It's not going to be perfect at giving you advice. You still have to apply critical thinking. The output is only as good as the input. And before you get to the output and accept the output, you need to do quality assurance. You need to make sure that what's coming out makes sense and adjust accordingly. Because I've gotten some ridiculous recommendations from AI that have nothing to do with what I've been asking for. So that's the resume piece. The network piece, before we go back to the beginning of the transition process. The best transition I've ever seen was a sergeant major. This sergeant major came to my events, in-person networking events. He reached out to people he knew in the military, defense contractors, friends, people on bases. Every time he was traveling for work, whether it was in the Philippines or wherever he might be, he was talking to people. He was getting an idea of what they're going through. So when this person came to my General Atomics event, which is a local defense company here in San Diego, we were able to set him up with the senior production manager, and that conversation went really well. And then he was able to initiate the process of interviewing recruiters at General Atomics. So that's about the best people can do. But that man is extremely, extremely extroverted, and not everyone is built like that. So networking is kind of, in a gross analogy, similar or analogous to playing chess. Because you can only talk to so many people, because you have to select which people you talk to and how prepared you are and what you talk about and if they respond, you can't put all your eggs in all the baskets. You need to be very strategic. And that's kind of where that AI piece can come after you've developed your resume. Where should I be focusing? Where am I most competitive? Which geographic regions? What industries? What salary bands? What job titles? Um, and then you can even use AI to an extent to write outreach messages, but I don't rely on just the gross output. I recommend editing things along the way. But it'll sound like AI. Claude's way better, by the way. It sounds most human for its writing. But you know, we're getting really close to doing the complete 180 back to the beginning. Just remember that you you will be a veteran, or you are going to be a transitioning service member. Um, that is part of your identity, but it's not your whole identity. And so, why do I say that? Because if you do what I did, and I see many service members do, and move states, you know, get into an education program, lose your clearance, um, try to apply to roles outside of the main industries that veterans are more competitive for, like defense. Um, it's going to be much more difficult. So you need to be realistic and pragmatic about who you approach, how you approach them, and the value you bring. Um, for example, if we've had several roles posted over the last couple months, and people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I'm about to be a veteran. I want to help veterans." And I say, "Okay, well, what did you do? Like, did you manage a program in HR? Did you, um, help people in career services?" No, I was maintenance chief of helicopters, and I want to work in nonprofit. Like, I'm not here to crush dreams. Like, you do want to do what's best for you. You do want to do what's best for your family, financially, spiritually, mentally, all those good things. But people need to be realistic that every conversation you have, you're going to have strengths. And that's what you need to focus on and what you want to market. Because if you come to me and you say, "Well, I was a mechanic and I just want to be in the nonprofit space," and there's no specificity attached to that, you're basically telling me you don't know what you're doing. You haven't really thought about where you'd be competitive and where you'd have a good chance of getting a job. You're doing the scramble. You're doing the Hail Mary. And that's not going to cut it. You need to be prepared for what's next, and the sooner you can start, the better, because a bad plan is better than no plan. So that's the 30-minute mark. That's the controllable factors in a transition. I want to spend some time after this, for the next part of the webinar, talking about kind of the common pitfalls and the best mental attitude and way to approach the job search. But I do want to open it up for questions, comments, concerns.
Who has questions for Bryce? This is a world-class leader when it comes down to this stuff, guys. I'm not seeing anything in the chat there, Bryce. Why don't you go ahead and continue on?
Okay. So I don't like telling my story for the sake of telling my story. You'll probably experience or maybe feel compelled, tempted at some point to really tell your life story. And I'm here to tell you that in most circumstances, 90% of the time, that's not the appropriate way to communicate to potential future work contact. So how can I tell my story in a way that's relevant for you, so that way I can identify the problems, the pitfalls, the way I was able to move forward? I'm going to try to tell you about my personal experience and the things that I had to radically adjust in my head to better understand my place in the world. not just for myself and my finances, but my family, my long-term career, my well-being. Um, so this will be kind of less about my story and more about how things along the way related to common transition, um, problems, those kinds of things. So, when I was 18, grew up in a small town. I don't know if you guys have heard of Aberdeen, Washington. It's where Kurt Cobain from Nirvana grew up. It rains just north of us is Forks, where that Twilight movie and book were done or was written about. So it's rainy basically all the time. Very, very tough to have kind of like a positive, bright outlook. There's a lot of socioeconomic problems attached to that, of course, but I knew I want to get, out of Dodge. So, for me, with 9/11 happening, for me at a young age, um, I kind of like latched on to that financial security. And that's not something I'm proud to admit. I wish I could say, well,
Is it him or is it
branches.
us, folks?
Okay, yeah, it's him.
Sorry, can you just shout it out, please?
Yeah, you dropped out there for about a minute there, Bryce. And you had some
Oh,
low bandwidth cooking right now.
is it better now?
A little better, yes.
Okay. Um, so my point being is I went to all the different armed services branches and tried to figure out what was best for me. I was pretty close to thinking about signing a contract with the Army for being an intelligence signals analyst. Um, but someone was able to approach me and say, "Hey, I think you should apply for the ROTC or Officer Commissioning Program," and that's kind of what led me to the Naval Academy. Um, one of the things about the Naval Academy is that we'd have these speakers. We wouldn't just have the training that was really, really focused and intense the first year, but um, after that, we were able to have General Mattis. Well, maybe not General Mattis. It was probably Petraeus at the time. Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, Dick Cheney, all these people from around the world. Everyone wants to come talk to midshipmen at the Naval Academy. And that was great, but it really kind of imbued in me that I was supposed to have a silver spoon um, for whatever happened when I got out. And so, as a surface warfare officer, realizing that no one really cared where you came from, they just cared about how you did at your job. Um, that was an awakening, and that was like if I were to describe warfare officer for those that don't know, it's basically like this battle of wills because you have sleep deprivation, you have stress, you have tight spaces, you have there's not a lot of freedom associated with being on a ship when you're out in the middle of the sea. And even though I knew that was a very difficult lifestyle, I couldn't imagine myself in my 40s or 50s as a commanding officer doing that for that many years. I always kind of thought I had more time. And so by the time I got out of the service, I had a medical issue that could not be resolved and went through the medical board process. And, it was extremely trying to solve psychologically how I went from having a guaranteed career to no guarantees whatsoever. The first job I applied to was probably 60K. So, I don't know the exact math, but much less than I was making as an O3. And I was with JP Morgan Chase as an analyst. Um, I just want people to understand that we're told that we're the best of the best. We're part of the 1%, the 1%. For most people going through basic or my version, which was complete year, um, it's very, very difficult to realistically realize that your entire sense of self and belonging in the world outside the military almost entirely depends upon how you market yourself. So if you can't effectively market your value proposition for those specific jobs, it doesn't matter. Like no one, it's much different than it used to be. I think people got an idea with 9/11 for a certain period of time that as a veteran you're kind of guaranteed a job. And I don't want to say that's never the case, but it's not always the case. Um, and
Hey,
so,
Bryce, if we could pause you there for a second, we do have a question in the audience.
yeah.
So it was mentioned earlier that Wounded Warrior Project has many, many, many more programs than just helping wounded warriors. So my question to you is, if you could name one of your favorite programs that nobody associates with the Wounded Warrior Project that they actually do, what would it be?
Um, I mean, I really want to not answer your question and tell you my program is the best, but that's not what you're asking. I think what you're asking is what is the most underutilized program out of our programs and services that provides tangible benefits. From a purely financial point of view and holistic health point of view, we had the Warrior Care Network. So I've known people with sleep apnea, PTSD, TBI, and we fly them out to the top medical networks in the country, like John Hopkins here on the East Coast, and they do comprehensive, studies and trying to figure out, if there's medications that will help, if there's um, I'm sure they have different machines that will help as well. Um, that's heavily underutilized, and it's not talked about enough because I think you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're available to use until you kind of inquire, and that's kind of near the top of the list, but not a lot of people use it. Now, something that's fairly commonly used, but not quite as intensive, is this program called Project Odyssey. And Project Odyssey is a way for the service members, sometimes their family members, based on the Project Odyssey trip, and they go out into the wilderness and they counsel. They talk about mental health issues, but it's in kind of more of a non-threatening and more engaging environment. So if people are whitewater rafting and they have that fear and anxiety, they can say, okay, so how were you able to overcome that difficulty, um, as it relates to things that have bothered you in the past? So I think Project Odyssey is up there as well. And the other one was called Warrior Care Network.
I've been through some of those programs via Wounded Warrior Project, and they are remarkable. So I will say, yeah, 1000%, I will agree that they are underutilized. So, anyways, I apologize, Bryce. Continue.
Yeah, no worries. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that, you know, resumes can be fixed, resumes can be tailored. I can coach networking, and you can either look at the local networking organizations, like here in San Diego we have something called BBC. um, there's millmentor.com where you can filter the people and then sign up on anyone's schedule almost immediately. It's amazing, sometimes same day, sometimes next day. um, LinkedIn, you can get, if you look at my other videos to go through the process, you can go to past companies and the different armed services branches. So that way, if you do want to reach out to someone at a specific company, you can filter by veteran status. LinkedIn, it's so inundated, it's so saturated that a lot of people don't respond to messages. And that's but you just need to have that understanding that every time you reach out isn't going to be a response. But if you target veterans, target military friendly companies and people. Maybe someone is a military spouse, military dependent growing up. You should have a higher response rate. But the thing you have to coach, and this is the full circle moment, so that way we can maybe open it up for questions at 12:45, is the biggest thing that I have to deal with when talking to transitioning service members, or members and veterans and military spouses. It's about the ego. So, if there are a few select people that their ego is too small, their confidence, using the word ego kind of loosely. And, those people, they need to understand the skills and experience that do translate, that are relevant for jobs. So that way they can position themselves accordingly. But I would say for a large majority of people in the military, and I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, meaning that there is no guarantee. No one, like, I don't like the word entitled, but I'm having maybe deserving. Like, no one is guaranteed a job. No one, whether you're a Navy SEAL, a Navy commander, an EA, E9, like, nothing is guaranteed. What people need to understand is that as you kind of start to disassociate, or transfer is probably a better word, from your military identity and sense of self, you need to continue to work and find ways that translate and transfer to the civilian roles that you're competitive for. Because those conversations, those network connections, those relationships, that's what's going to get you in the door. It's not going to be based on even certifications, definitely not education. While education can be great and a good break, we're finding more and more that's not a guarantee of much anymore these days. It can be helpful, but you know, I just read an article like yesterday from my old career coach at the University of Washington, where I got my MBA, and he said the most results people are getting these days has nothing to do with their resume. The resume is a ticket of entrance, but it's those network relationships within your social network that get you in the door, get you to the people on the team. It's always best to start lower and then work your way up, maybe the hiring manager and above. So, yeah, I think that's kind of, the main message that I want to convey today. There is no magic bullet. It is the coaching process. It is a question and problem of human ego and redefining self, and understanding that, the military was a part of your service, but you have much more going on in your life after. You probably have a family, you probably have friends, you probably have network connections, and figuring out how you kind of fit into that puzzle piece going forward is arguably the most important you can and will do in your transition.
Bryce, I want to ask you the question. For those here, we do some of this here at Seven Eagle, but obviously you are a true subject matter expert when it comes down to this. If we have someone here in the connections cohort that wants to take advantage of your services, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so everyone has to register with Wounded Warrior Project. That's the initial step, as I mentioned. It can take just a few seconds if you use ID Me. Otherwise, a lot of people use their DD-214 to register. But our career services specifically, we're in high demand. So, we meet with everyone, not me, but our coordinators meet with people that elect for that service. It's called Warriors to Work. And they kind of tell people what we can and cannot do, because one of the worst things we can do is signal like, hey, we're a job placement agency. We don't guarantee jobs. We coach you through the process to be successful finding a job, or finding the next step of your career. And that meeting is like 20 minutes over Microsoft Teams, and then you'll get assigned to me or another career transition coach. And I meet with people every few weeks. People come up out of the woodwork and be like, hey, Bryce, I need a new resume prep. So as long as you're respectful, which most all veterans are, you can continue utilizing their service and kind of like take a break or turn back on at any given point in time.
Fantastic. What is that like? Let's say someone logs in and goes in today, goes through either ID me or because these guys don't have their DD-214s yet, so they're still on SkillBridge. From when they register through the program, how soon are they contacted by one of the coordinators?
Well, the registration process, if you don't use the automatic verification, a few days, maybe a week or so. But the cool thing about our programs and services is everyone loves apps, wants to do something on their phone. So you can actually download our app, the MyWWP app, and I believe you can register through there. But then it's almost like a shopping cart. It's like like if you look at a menu, you're like, oh, maybe I want to do Project Odyssey, maybe I want to do Warriors to Work, maybe I want to do benefits, and it's really easy. In fact, it's almost too easy because sometimes a lot of people like front load it, and then they don't have time for everything at that given point in time. But I recommend like not front loading it, but a chance. I've seen physical health and wellness coach, talk about nutrition and exercise, and I know a lot of people feel like they don't need that now, but as we age, things compound. Things, my wife was late stage diabetes type 1 diagnosed, so those kinds of things can really, really come into handy, especially if you maybe don't have that initial support right out of the service, or you're still getting used to the VA healthcare system. And you can also do all that on the website, on our portal. You can sign up for different programs and services.
So the $64,000 question I have for you, and this is the last one before I let these go for today. What drew you to coming to work for Wounded Warrior Project, and what excites you every single day while you're working through the program to be a part of Wounded Warrior?
Yeah, I mean, the long and short of it was, I mentioned, as you're going through transition, as you're figuring out what you want to do next, you should always leverage your strengths. I literally have a Swiss Army knife over there on my wife's bedstand because I have the the top bedroom office, and I used it earlier, and it was awful. Like I might as well have used like a nail file or something, right? And then I had to like figure out which one I wanted to use. Why do I say that? Because at least for me, Navy surface warfare officer, we're always told we were the jack of all trades. That's great. That can be really great as an executive officer, as a senior executive, as someone who's managing large teams and operations floor. Those things kind of come into handy later in life. But a lot of people, I'd say the majority of people, we become specialists, at least for a point in time. And for me, I was just doing this every day. I was living and breathing it. I was, very involved in not Mill Mentor, but Veterati. It was like a mentoring programs for veterans where you can sign up for phone calls. And I became a forward block coach, which is a volunteer position. And I wasn't feeling fulfilled as a defense project manager, and I had been a tech project manager before that. And that come sorry some people call it like the come to God or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Career way, um and you're feeling burnt out, you're tired.
I think we may have lost him again.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, he's back. Yep, you're back.
Okay. Yeah. So the coming full circle, it's about what's best for you, what's best for your family, and this problem that we have transitioning out of the military, it's a very large problem. It's a problem that's not going to solve itself overnight, and we're going to need some really high level, strategic level thinking on how we can approach this, because we could split into hundreds and hundreds of different companies and organizations and different leaders throughout the space. But until we really get a grasp on why there's underemployment and unemployment at the levels that they're currently at for the veteran and civilian workforce, it's going to continue to be a problem. So I commend you, everyone that's here today, for being part of this program, because you're getting after it, you're getting ahead of it. And I'm hoping that, if you could just take one thing, pass it on, and pay it forward to someone who comes after you, you'll make the world a better place. And that's what motivates me every day.
Love it. Love it. 1000%. Well, Bryce, I do want to say thank you very much for your time today. We do greatly appreciate it. And we really do appreciate from the bottom of our hearts everything that you do and everything that Wounded Warrior Project is doing. So, Bryce Boyer from the Wounded Warrior Project joining us today. Bryce, again, I'm a huge advocate of Wounded Warrior. I have been a recipient of several different programs through Wounded Warrior. I appreciate everything that you do every single day, sir.
Thank you so much. And sir, could you follow up and send me? I'd like to adjust my email for if I do this again, if that's all right.
Yep, absolutely. I'll circle back with you. Give me a little bit of time tomorrow, and I'll circle back with you via email.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.